This is Rick from Bike Fitness Coaching. As a bike tester and product tester, I get asked all the time, what's the best bike? What's the best wheels? What do you recommend for cranks, etc.? So I just want to do a little video on at least my stable here, what I have for bikes, starting with the first one here. Cervelo R5ca. Story on this one, long-term test bike. I was out riding one time. I had a old giant TCR Advanced SL, bought from one of the old team members from Amgen Masters team, and rode that for quite a couple of years. And I was out on a ride one time. I caught up with a group that was riding Cervelos, and passed them, turned around, came back, passed them again on the way back, and ended up, they were in the same parking lot that I was parked at after the ride. One of the guys came and asked me, said, if you're going to ride that fast, we'd rather have you on a Cervelo instead of a Giant. And got involved in the S5 development program. After that was complete, they said they didn't have any more bikes to test at that point in time. So why don't you take this one as a loaner, long-term test bike. Go ahead and ride it hard, try to break it, tell us what works, what doesn't work. So I've had this 5 years now, 52,000 miles on the frame, all documented. And I had the second bike I had two bikes here for a while. The second bike was a BH ultralight. Just rode that one time and did a bike fit. Bikefitnesscoaching.com and biketestreviews.com if you want to look me up. Here's part of the bike testing and bike fitting platform. Talk about that in a while. Did a bike fit one time on a gentleman that had an old aluminum P3, had been about 12 years old, had the components were about the same age. Came here for a bike fit, and I said, do you really want to do a bike fit on this bike? It's really, it needs all new components. And he got to thinking, he said, I'm married now, got kids, got a job, and I don't have time to do the training anymore for all three disciplines. He was a triathlete. And he looked over on the other side of the studio here, and he goes, what's that bike over there? I said, my BH Ultralight. It was all set up with Pioneer power meters, dual power meters. He said, can I ride around the block? I said, sure. Rode around the block, came back with a big smile on his face. Said, how much you want for it? So there went my bike. I also do bike fitting for a local Trek dealer, Trek Level 2 certified, and had a Trek Amanda in here, not the latest one that just came out, but the one just before that. Good riding bike. I would compare it to a Cervelo R3. It was Ultegra equipped, and turned that one back in, so it's back down to one bike again, the Cervelo R5ca. And went out on a Saturday ride, and good ride, hard ride, came back, put it in the bike stand. Sunday morning, wanted to go for a ride, and there was a crack in the top tube. You can kind of see where Cervelo fixed it. They fixed it actually from the inside. It was fixed by the guy that actually designed and built the bike. One of the other things we changed on it, if you notice that, DI2 for the Cervelo. When Don was putting this together, he actually shaved the shifter bosses off that went right there. He said, I guess you won't be needing these anymore. So it took his little Dremel bit, drill that out, got the Ultegra 6800 Di2. Works really great with the rotor rings. All my bikes have 5234 in the front. And there's a little trick that I worked with rotor on, and you'll see it right in there. There's a little wedge that if you leave that wedge out, if you don't put the wedge in, the thing shifts horribly because the derailleur will hang up on the chain down here. The derailleur will be at this angle instead of this angle, so lines it up perfectly. Really shifts well. You see a couple other bikes with rotor rings with the wedge in. So this was converted to a Di2. Why it's sitting here right now, doing a little bit of work right now with Elite on a possible replacement. We're trying to make everything work, but as you know, everybody, this company here is out of business now. So what is that going to do for all of the bike fitters? Even Purely Custom has a solution for their fit machine with CompuTrainer, so they're going to shift over. So this looks promising. Right now I got the wired cadence meter hooked to the back of the machine, doing some testing on it. So how does the bike ride out on the road? It's fantastic. It's one of the best bikes. In fact, it is the best bike I've ever ridden. It is just a dream to ride fast, light, and really responsive, the right amount of handling. I know the pros didn't like it, only for the fact that they said it beat them up when they would race this bike. Well, if you think about it, the pros like their 35 to 50 millimeter deep dish wheels. This bike is already an ultra stiff bike, and you put extra stiff wheels on, of course it's going to beat you up. This bike was designed for C24s, not C50s. With C24s, rides like a dream. So this is the first bike. We'll get over here to number 2. So what had happened after I had a crack in the Cervelo's frame, I took it back over to Cervelo, and I had no bikes to ride or train with. So went to actually Craigslist and found this guy for a really great price. It included the profile design wheels. I used to have a Giant, like I mentioned, a long time ago, and this Giant is one of those rare bikes where you feel like you're sitting in it instead of on top of it. It is a phenomenally fast and very well handled bike. It's fast uphill, fast downhill. Modified it from when I bought it from the guy. I put rotor 2 in power, so I got the new rotor dual power meters. I also added a GS Ultegra with an 1132. So, you know, as you get older, the hills don't get any easier, and I try to do hills at least once a week. We're talking about hills of San Clemente, where we'll do 1,000 feet of climbing every half an hour, and it is 16, 17, I think it peaks out, some of the hills peak out at 17.5% grade. Most of them are 13, 12 and 13%. So yeah, 32 works out well. Like I said, this bike does everything well. Coming down the hills, it just rides like it's on rails. Fast, light. So when I first got it, I had a clicking noise in it. Turns out the fork was starting to crack. So this was all of a sudden. I couldn't ride the Cervelo because it wasn't here, it was being repaired. The Giant had a bad fork on it. So I got a another Giant, brand new bike for what I think was a real steal out the bike shop. Got it down in San Diego at a Giant dealer. Anyway, when the bike, I found a brand new NV fork for it. The problem was that with the new taper style fork versus the straight wall fork, the thing didn't fit. So I had to call Cane Creek and say, you know, this is what the issue is, and they said, oh, we got a solution. So you need this headset, and I picked that up through G2 Bike up in Aliso Viejo. They got it as fast as they could. It was still a week, so at least I got the other bike I'll show you next that I was able to ride in the meantime. Headset came in about a week later. I put it on, clamped this down, and the forks wouldn't turn. This handlebar wouldn't turn. So called Cane Creek again and said, what in the world's going on? And they said, oh, did you measure the space underneath the top cap? And yeah, I said it's a little bit low. This bike has a very deep set inside. The headset bearing sits really low, so that pulled this down a little bit further. And when I put pressure on here, it bottomed out and jammed and wedged itself right. The top of the headset locked itself onto the top of the steer tube cap, the head tube, and it wouldn't turn. So again, went back to G2 Bike per Cane Creek, and I got a set of shims. Had to put about 3 millimeters worth of shims above the bearing. Put a couple in here and a couple in here, and it works perfectly. So there's that, fix that. The other thing I was able to do is, if you know anything about Giant, they are a BB86 frame set, and if you know anything about the rotors, with the 2-in power, that is a BB30 crank. And the reason is because all the power meter electronics are shoved inside of the bottom bracket spindle. So what does that mean? That means I got to work a 30 millimeter spindle inside of a 25 millimeter, or what was sized for a 25 millimeter crank. So as you know, works perfect. The trick is you need a certain special set of bearings for that, which is in there, and there's no creaking, no squeaking. So I have a BB30 bottom bracket, 30 spindle, I should say, BB30 spindle inside of a BB86 bottom bracket. So this is the Giant, and again, if you're looking for a bike, highly recommend Giant as well. Great bike. Now on to bike number 3.